Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for taking time to attend this event today, Chancellor's Chat. It's sponsored by the Berkeley Staff Assembly as one of a variety of signature events that we host. We have streaming going on today, so welcome to our streaming audience. Thanks for checking in with us today. My name is Donna Seward, and it's my extreme pleasure to be here today as the chair of this assembly to give the welcome and the acknowledgments. We have some acknowledgments definitely to our Assistant Vice Chancellor Janine Raymond, who is the Staff Assembly sponsor and made the streaming possible today. So thank you, Janine. To EBI for providing this space in which streaming is possible. To our events and programs committee members who made this event possible, there's a lot of work behind the scenes. To those co-chairs of that committee, Cheryl Olson and Stephanie Eistetter, and those committee members. Visit us at bsa.berkeley.edu to learn more about the signature programs such as the mentorship program, the recent roundtable illuminating campus change that happened in March, and upcoming excellence in management in which staff nominate staff on the theme of architects of empowerment. That comes up in May. The program today is one that Chancellor Dirks helped us design last year, and we thought it went really well. He's been provided with some questions about high-level initiatives and other campus issues such as change. And so he's had a chance to review these questions from staff, and he will spend his first portion of the program providing answers. And then he likes to turn the table and ask us questions. So we thank him for revamping the program with us because we found it very fun and successful. So I'd like to introduce and please give a warm welcome to our 10th Chancellor of UC Berkeley, Nicholas B. Dirks.
Thank you, Donna, and thank you to the Berkeley Staff Assembly for inviting me back. I really enjoyed my conversation with you and the format that we devised last year. And this year, of course, we have a streaming audience, and I want to say hello to you and delighted to have the opportunity to address you, even if I can't see you. So we are, in fact, thinking of doing more and more with streaming so that we can reach out and make possible connections that are sometimes very difficult to do in person, given work schedules, given where people are located. And of course, as we develop our technology, we'll have more a scope for interactivity. As well as just connecting one way. So I look forward to this as a new way, in fact, to connect and reach out and hear from you about the concerns that you have. The most valuable thing for me last year, of course, was the opportunity to hear from you. I sit far too much of my day and life in my office in California Hall. Not only do I miss the beautiful weather, but I don't always get the opportunity to meet and talk to you and hear from you in unmediated ways about the things that you're thinking about, the things you're doing, things you're worried and concerned about. And so this is an opportunity for me to really hear from you. I do have some questions that were given me, and I have jotted down some things that I want to say in response to them. But first, if I may, I'd like to set the stage a little bit in terms of the kinds of things I've been thinking about and doing over the course of the last year. In our first chat that took place about a year ago, I was still in my first year, and I could claim that I had just arrived. And although I would like to continue to use that alibi, and although in many ways I feel still myself like I've just arrived, and I suspect I'll be feeling that for some time to come, given the enormous complexity of the institution and the fact that I'm still meeting people and hearing about things for the first time, even on campus. I now realize I've been here long enough that I have to fess up and say, all right, we're deep at work in trying to advance on some of the proposals and some of the ideas we had when we first came. And of course, we're also deep in a variety of different kinds of struggles, really, I think I could say, that I think I now understand and can have a better sense of than I did even a year ago. And I want to begin with the large some large issues and then go to very specific ones. But I'm going to begin with the good news. In the most recent evaluation of global universities by the Times Higher Education Supplement, which is a world-renowned chronicle about higher education that has used to be attached with the Times of London, but now is independent. They did probably the most objective ranking of any of the global rankings, any of the many now new rankings systems that are being used, and the results were very gratifying, but they were even more gratifying than they were before because of the format. So they ranked us number 6 in terms of our overall global reputation, but they then noted that the top 6 universities globally were qualitatively and quantitatively significantly better than all the rest. There was a big sort of step function down when you went to 7. And these 6 universities were Oxford and Cambridge, Harvard and MIT, Stanford and Berkeley. Now, you'll recognize immediately on that list that we are the only public university in the United States. Now, Oxford and Cambridge are both quasi-public in the sense that they're controlled by the state. They have their tuition set and other kinds of issues set by the University Grants Commission. So it's a kind of similar structure, but they have a great deal of wealth, mostly vested in the colleges that make up those universities. So they're much more private than we are in terms of their support and funding. But of course, over here, Harvard, MIT, Stanford, we know. The Wall Street Journal, in fact, today did a story about the rich universities. And of course, we're not one of the rich universities. We're just one of the great universities. But the ranking was gratifying because it made clear that we really were still one of the greatest universities in the world. And I have said this before, and I'll say it again. We're not just one of the greatest or the greatest public university. We're actually one of the best universities. So what then is extraordinary is to recognize that as a public and as a university that has only recently begun to really adjust to some of the new pressures that are put on us around different modes of financing, we're still doing exceptionally well. That being said, we are in a very different situation than we were even 6 years ago. And the adjustment is not always an easy adjustment. When I look at statistics that have to do with the funding that we get from the state, I note that, in fact, Berkeley is still the one campus that has been most affected by the cuts. We are still down 43% in terms of our state allocation from where we were in 2007. And other campuses go from 36% to plus 7%. So some of the newer campuses and in particular campuses that have been not as active in this kind of cutting-edge research, in fact, have been benefiting from, albeit justifiable and understandable, redistributive formula and goals in the office of the president, but it means that we've been significantly and disproportionately affected by the cuts in the state. So even talking about the overall cuts doesn't really fully capture what our position is. And of course, as you all know, we don't have a medical school, which has helped to cross-subsidize some of the universities that are very active in research, like UCLA and San Diego and even Davis to that extent. Nevertheless, of course, we confront the possibility of big raises in tuition. and new ways of doing business with a certain level of trepidation, because we are committed, of course, to the fact that our students not suffer as a result of state cuts. We, as you know, have a very robust financial aid system that we've maintained, and we've said repeatedly, even during the protests, and I've said it to students who were shouting at me, that if they came from a California family that made less than $150,000, their bills would stay the same. And that is true. It will affect out-of-state students, and it will affect students coming from families that make more than $150,000. And I also understand that that when tuition goes up, it's a non-trivial expense for middle-class families. So I don't take that lightly, but I also don't take it at face value that tuition is going to make everyone suffer, which I think is something we've been trying to clarify. But of course, you know, the commitment we have to access and affordability is one that is difficult to make and then square with the kinds of headlines that we get. And of course, we usually get negative ones from the San Francisco Chronicle. We've documented that we get stories from the Chronicle, 63% of them are not good. And just to show you why this is a problem for us, the LA Times, 62% of the stories are good. So, you know, what is it about our hometown newspaper? One expects a little bit of home court advantage, and we have the opposite. But of course, what we are very proud of, and this really stands out in contrast to Harvard, MIT, and Stanford, is that we do, in fact, express our commitment to access in the numbers of students who come from families that are, for example, Pell eligible, which means families making less than $45,000. And we have 33 to 34% of our students coming from those families. You know, Stanford is around 12%. I mean, it's just a quantum jump difference when you actually think about the kinds of things that people say about access and affordability. So we're doing that despite the fact that we don't have the money that they have. And we feel proud of our research, and we feel proud of what we've been able to do in terms of our commitment to a diverse student body. And that being said, of course, we also spend a good deal of our time thinking not about so much what we do well, but what we actually must do better. And that is true in virtually everything that we're engaged in. And of course, you've been reading about the CO2, the Committee of Two, the governor and the president facing off in this kind of epic battle to decide the future of the University of California. And while that's been going on and a lot of headlines have been generated, we've been worried about the public fallout. We've been worried that in that very public and very highly politicized contest, the really important things get lost. A lot of attention to waste, a lot of attention to administrative bloat, by which they mean both the salaries that are high and the numbers of administrators. And we hear things said about the university that we feel are not only unfair, but actually disadvantage us hugely in the kind of public opinion theater in which we just are sort of unable and feel blocked in getting our story out. And one of the stories, and this is really to try to connect this back now to some of the immediate concerns of U.S. staff, one of the things that we just don't get across is the range of things that administrators, that staff do. Because when they use the numbers about administrative bloat, they're talking about all of you and me, us, all of us. And they just somehow assume that we're doing things that are unnecessary for the educational mission or for the direct research. And it betrays a fundamental misunderstanding. And unfortunately, the governor, among others, don't really get it. They don't seem to understand what it takes to keep an excellent university with our range of commitments, our range of activities going today in a very complex environment in which we have responsibilities around everything from compliance to research support to student advising and in fact, of course, almost every day additional services that we feel that we need, or sometimes are told that we need to introduce to make sure our students are safe. For example, vis-a-vis questions having to do with sexual assault and violence on campus, that our students are well served in, for example, the position of student athletes and the kinds of demands on their time and pressures on their lives when they're students. So, you know, again, each of us has a story we can tell about the role that we play, and we know how we are feeling pressured to get our jobs done. We know our jobs keep expanding. And we know that there are so many people, so many students, so many faculty, and so many other staff who depend on us to do the jobs that we do, which then, you know, sort of gets filed away. And when it gets coverage at all, it gets coverage in this negative light. And to me, this is actually one of the most disturbing things right now. So we've been trying to find ways to both build the tables and the numbers, but also the narratives and the stories that will convey a different reality, and the reality, in fact, that we know exists on campus. So one of the reasons these conversations are so critical for me is they will help me shape the things that I say when I'm talking to different groups, whether it's alumni who ask the same questions because they read about them in the press, whether it's people outside the immediate community of Cal, whether it's politicians in Sacramento or politicians in Washington, or journalists, or, you know, any number of other people that I interact with on a almost daily basis. Because that's my job. I mean, I'm out there trying to raise money. I'm also out there trying to represent the university. And these are the kinds of issues that are in some ways the most difficult to address, because the deck has already been stacked before the question gets asked. And so we're reacting. Now, we, of course, always say we need to be more proactive. We need to be better at getting our story out there. We're trying. We try to do it. But there are limits. And again, it will take extra staff and extra resources to do that. So one of the things that we can do is actually all of us, in our own ways, in our own interactions, be ambassadors for the university. And that is not to say that we should only say what's great about the university, although maybe with outside audiences we should stress it. But of course, by the same token, in a chat like this, in an exchange of this nature, we can also be honest with ourselves about many of the things that we don't do as well as we should, as well as we would certainly like to do. So, you know, that's the kind of general frame. I don't want to take up too much time because I really do want to have questions. Now, in terms of the questions that I received, should I sort of read them out and then respond to them, or how would you like me to?
Definitely the group hearing what the question
Yeah,
was and
yeah.
then your response. And
Okay.
thank you for paying attention to the time. Thank you.
Oh, well, I can still see it with my glasses down here. I can read this and this. You wonder why I always go around with, it's because I lose my glasses if I don't keep them on my nose. But I actually, they're bifocals. So it's just a different mode for bifocality. So the first question, internal communications is one of the biggest challenges on campus. How can the university network staff and build effective communications channels given the siloed and sometimes fragmented structure of the university? Okay, so I've been talking mostly about external communications, but I wanted to then, you know, segue to this question. Because again, in our cabinet meetings periodically, these questions come up when we're talking with different members of staff. You know, how we're talking about about the newspapers, we're talking about the Chronicle, we're talking about external communications, but we forget actually we have a huge community inside that we're not always doing the best job with in terms of communication. So we recognize that it's a challenge, and we've actually been directing a lot of attention during the last year precisely to internal issues. So, for example, this event really expresses our interest in using new technology to do better, as well as making sure we get a date on the calendar and stick to it. But the use of streaming technology has now been used on a number of occasions by the Office of Administration and Finance and by HR, who partnered with the BSA, in fact, to respond to questions and concerns that you raised in a number of different contexts. For example, in the faculty kickoff, when the faculty kickoff speaker at the Staff Appreciation Week reached a campus-wide audience, I think that was last year. That being said, I think the technology is here, and we can use it. We can use it more, and I think we can find ways to use it better. So, I think we last year we had an alumni streaming event, and we can do something like that with staff, where it's not so much I'm standing at a podium, but we can have some people sitting at a table, and then devise ways for questions to come in live from remote locations. And I think we can work to expand the range of things that we do to make sure that we can address things also in a timely way, because just once a year isn't really enough. Also, town halls have been used increasingly, and we've been encouraging the use of town halls. Nothing at some level replaces face-to-face time. And of course, it also then allows staff to meet people from different units informally as well as formally. And I think that's probably the most important thing. It's always something I say when I'm asked, for example, about online education. Will online education completely supplant the residential experience of the classroom and the campus? And I say, no. I mean, it's going to supplement, but it's not going to supplant. And we know that. We know that even when students are using, whatever they're using. I have a 15-year-old, and I can't keep up with it, but they want to do it with each other, which is why the undergraduate library, for example, has become a completely different space of interactivity, even though students are also connecting very widely. But they want to be here. And the advantages of getting together in person for them, the advantages of getting together for us, the advantages for faculty will never be substituted for. But we know that when you have this size of an organization, just bringing together people isn't enough, and we have to find other ways to do that. So anyway, I was asking around about things that we're doing. The NOW conference we just announced this morning for early summer, where staff can engage in career planning discussions, is something we've been thinking about for a while. It's very important to us. The Vice Chancellor for Administration and Finance will use streaming for the first town hall for their staff and encourage watch parties for staff closer to the local work areas as well. And so, those are some of the things we're doing, but I want to come back to it at the end and ask you for suggestions for more things that we can do as well. So the next question was, what are the specific ways the administration is dealing with the disengagement of our workforce due to unsustainable workloads, pay equity issues, workforce reductions, and the like? So it comes as no news to you now that we do have real pressures on our budget. We sent out earlier this year, of course, directives to cut from 2 to 4% in every unit. And we did so in the context of asking units to begin to assign priorities to the particular activities that they really wanted to focus on. And think perhaps about things that might be able to get slightly less direct staff time. We know that means, again, all change means putting burdens on the people who are affected. But we're trying to do this in ways that actually open up as many opportunities as anything else, so that when, for example, somebody takes the voluntary separation agreement, the office doesn't just go right back to where it was. We have to commit to not hiring that position for at least 6 months. And in turn, we've asked units to commit to rethinking opportunities for people inside the units for their own career development purposes, so that we actually have the advantage of giving both opportunities to people who've been thinking about retirement, and this gives them the means to do so a little bit earlier than they might otherwise have done, which we've seen has genuinely been the case. At the same time, opening up opportunities for others without layoffs, without draconian interventions of any kind. And again, we're doing this because we are responding to budgetary pressures. I'm still not going to stop working out there to try to get more money from the state. And the kind of fundraising that we're doing around new activities, priorities, and initiatives is, in my view, opportunities to bring additional resources into campus, into our home campus, and not just into those activities that we might identify and that might ignite the interest and then palpable support of donors and others. The next questions are about issues of compensation and again, resources. And I want to just reiterate my point, which is we've been juggling now difficult budgetary circumstances for some time. We are not in a crisis moment. Our budgets are going up, but our expenses are actually going up a little faster than our revenues. And that's what's been causing the problem, because we did readjust after 2008, 2009. We got to a new equilibrium, painfully. I wasn't here, but I've heard a lot about it. But it also meant that, that as soon as we could, we began to make up for some of the lost ground. There's so many interesting things happening on campus that the moment there's any additional resources available, people are trying to do something. And that, of course, means that you start spending more money. Our revenues are constrained by the things you know about, by how much tuition we can collect, how much state money we get, and how much philanthropy we can raise, as well as, of course, our research budgets. So we've been trying to think about ways to increase funding even beyond tuition and state money. And so every one of the initiatives, every one of the kinds of pillars that I've announced, I've been crafting with the help of so many people across campus. I've been crafting in a way that will actually generate new resources for everyone. So just for example, the undergraduate initiative. It's important for our students. 25,000 undergraduates here. I had a fireside chat yesterday. We didn't light the fire. But I had 45, 50 kids, students, in my basement, and we were talking about the issues that affected their undergraduate student experience. And they love it here. But they all said, I get lost in this process. I get lost there. They all talked about places where they fall through different kinds of cracks, and it slows them down. It gives them sometimes a narrative of frustration rather than a narrative of progress and then mastery. And what you want, of course, is students to feel like not only there are these great resources here, but they're actually really able to use them. And that translation project has been tough for some of our students, and it's not made easier by the scale and by the bureaucratic structure that we have here. So we've been focusing on trying to make a higher touch undergraduate experience for everybody. Now that's going to be good for our students. It's going to give them better educational experiences. It's also going to make them happier alumni. And although I may not be chancellor when we start doing $8, $9, $10 billion campaigns, future chancellors will be able to do that because they will have people who understand that that real efforts were made to make their experiences here better, so they didn't have to just make it on their own. And they can actually think back fondly about the institution that helped them. That's the undergraduate initiative. The recently announced Arts and Design Initiative is meant to tap into the extraordinary vitality of our community. It's meant to give students opportunities that every one of them need to have in some way to really engage with what it means to be a human being in a world that is getting increasingly technologically defined and oriented, and in which so many different kinds of forces, from climate change to world economic inequality, are impinging on our sense of agency and control. But the arts engage one at the level of creativity and our fundamental humanity. But it also turns out it taps into a lot of interest out there, including in the tech world, in providing the kind of environment in which real creativity is fostered at the level of at the moment of undergraduate teaching. If somebody's doing maths and statistics and computer science, they're also engaged in design. We already have that experiment going on with the Jacobs Center, but we can now do this across the campus. It's going to bring in resources. The Berkeley Global Campus, about which I'll say more later, but the Berkeley Global Campus has interested people all over the world. And they're attracted by an idea that will also bring them to invest in some part of Berkeley. And that activity will give opportunities for staff, it'll give opportunities for students, it will give opportunity for faculty, and it will draw people here. It'll bring the world to the Bay Area in a way that no other global strategy for any other university in the United States is doing. So it's going to bring people, it's going to bring networks, it's going to bring talent, and it's going to bring real resources. So all of the, I can talk about them in terms of, how I try to pitch them to people outside the university, but it's important inside the university to recognize these are ways to bring more resources in a current environment in which we can't just keep doing business as we've done it before. However, back to the specific questions. And I want to make sure, now I haven't juggled my cards to the point where I've lost the order of things. What are the specific ways the administration is dealing with, I read. At a recent, this is a question. At a recent BSA town hall, AVC Raymond stated that if some staff members are concerned about getting higher salaries, I read it last night, I'm just giving Janine a hard time, then perhaps UC Berkeley is not the right place for them. Do you agree with this assessment? Well, I checked with the source. And this is the quote. The quote is, if money is your primary motivator, this may not be the best option in a short-term context. I think that's an exact quote, or certainly what we know we have to say, because it's true. We don't pay the most fabulous salaries available in Northern California for most of the jobs that we do. On the other hand, the benefits here are extraordinary. They are still highly competitive, even though we know that both the employer and the employee contributions, for example, to the pension program have eroded our real income. And yet, believe me, coming from a private institution where there's a very different kind of pension system, this is an extraordinary system. Of course, it benefits you if you stay for your full career. And some people actually may want to have options that will mean they could come here for a few years and then go somewhere else. We want to be able to have a capacious enough set of options that we can continue, however, to make sure that this can be a lifetime, a vocation and a career wrapped into one, with the assurance that this is not going to leave one bereft later in life after you've contributed so much to the institution. So that is, again, part of what we are working to secure, both the short term and the longer term. I'm certainly mindful of the ways in which our real income has been eroded by these contributions. I mean, this is a real issue, and we are waiting, of course, for the mandate from OP about what the salary program will be. We haven't heard yet, but we also know that whatever we hear from them, it's not coming with money. It's completely independent of whatever state allocation might be as a result of the deliberations and negotiations of CO2. And so while there will be rules that get established system-wide, the real issue is how much we can manage to secure the finances that we need to continue to reward those of you and who have really committed yourself to this place, and who we often would love to give a great deal more to, but have to work within the financial realities that exist. I spoke about career, and I want to say again, at the risk of losing the specific questions, and I'm sure you'll tell me if I've done that. I also want to say we spend a lot of our time thinking about the career part of your jobs. how we really want to make sure that you can develop your talent and your goals and aspirations while you're here. And this means even thinking back to the question about budget cuts, that we use opportunities and reprioritization, the reprioritization process that goes on inside units to open up opportunities for those staff who would like to take advantage of them. This is certainly what we've been doing in our unit. We've had a number of people who are leaving. It's a big adjustment, and change makes everybody nervous. But I've also tried to focus on, well, what can we do with this that will make everybody here have an opportunity they might not have otherwise had, without belittling the loss of some of our most valued colleagues at the same time. But this goes to the next question, which is really about, are these cutbacks going to lead to layoffs? I wish I could say in a blanket way, there will be no layoffs. There always are some layoffs in units, regardless of the budgetary situation. There's some units that are going to shift their resources, or sometimes that themselves are having the ebb and wane of their institutional existence. But we are trying to keep this to the minimum, with recognition that this again may open up opportunities. But it's not something that is being occasioned by the current budgetary situation. We're holding that. The only thing we did with the voluntary separation program was to open up that option. So we didn't do anything else. I don't think we're in a crisis at all, but we are at a place where we have to reckon with the new reality. So again, reprioritizing means deprioritizing in some instances, shifting resources around, and potentially moving within the institution. But in a context in which we are committed to doing the best we can do to sustain and support the opportunities that exist for you on campus. Nothing like furloughs, we're not talking about that. And even when we look at some of the smaller units that have less in the way of reserves, we're taking that into account. And there are appeal processes built into the budgetary cycle that will allow units to say, look, we just can't do this. And we will engage those as they come up, and already have had some that did, and we understand the need for that. I think there's just one more question. By the way, I didn't quite read out the full question that I was just responding to, which is, we've heard some staff may be laid off in 2015, 2016 as a result of budget cuts. How many staff may be affected, and when are furloughs being considered again as a way to lower costs? So no, furloughs aren't, and the things that I just said are the responses to that particular question. And again, you should feel free to query me more about those issues if I haven't addressed them well enough. The last question is, what are the three biggest physical changes we'll see on the campus in the next 5 to 10 years in terms of new buildings, construction, and so on? There is, of course, in addition to things you already know that are going on, the Lower Sproul project, which is nearing completion, the BAM PFA, which is going to open in January, which is such an exciting thing for me to contemplate. There is also, of course, there are plans to build new things as well. And we're fortunate that we were able to secure at least some funding for what we're calling the Berkeley Way project. It will house psychology, education in the School of Public Health, and it's scheduled to start construction at the end of this calendar year. It'll be on the west edge it'll be close to here, right next door. Yeah, west edge of campus, like there. Okay. So that's very exciting because I don't like the view I have of Tolman Hall from University House. So I'm already thinking about what we could build there, but of course we don't have any money for it. But as you know, Tolman is seismically challenged, and the sooner we can open up that new building, and get those units in there, and rethink how to use that Hearst Avenue stretch, the better I'll sleep at night, because when I saw the earthquake reports, I got really concerned about that. In terms of other construction, we know that something will happen at the Berkeley Global Campus. We just don't know when. But we are in conversation with a number of potential donors and a number of international universities about establishing phase one of a project that would use whatever resources are invested. We don't have any here, but whatever resources are invested, plus expectations of rent and fees that would be paid through the programs we inaugurate, as well as the research support we can secure. A set of activities that would effectively take on some of the challenges that we face as a global society. And so we're looking at the establishment of a new, very distinguished postgraduate scholars program, something like the Rhodes Scholar Program, to bring students from all over the world who've recently graduated from college to come here to study global ethics, global governance, global research and collaboration, and to think about global issues so that they wouldn't just think about it in the abstract, but they'd also be engaging with questions having to do with climate change, alternative energy, data science, precision medicine, global health. Those are some of the things that we're beginning with. But it'll be evolving over time. But we have huge enthusiasm from Richmond about this project. I had a member of faculty invited me to a barbecue with the mayor and his wife of Richmond, Tom Butts, and he kept saying how thrilled they are that we're doing this. Bill Lindsay, who's the city manager at Richmond, said it was the biggest thing for Richmond since the shipyards, and he said that repeatedly and in public. And I know that there have been discussions about this, and there also have been various groups who have confronted us around the question of community benefits. We actually, long before anybody protested anything, we had begun a process of regular meetings with community leaders, representatives of unions and other interested parties to discuss what a community benefits package might realistically be. Again, we don't have a lot of resources, but we know that as we bring resources in, we want the community to benefit. So we're quite prepared to sign binding agreements and develop understandings through MOUs, some of them probably more specific than to particular kinds of areas of activity than would be accommodated by a single document, to assure the community that we mean what we say, that we're going to be partnering with them. But we will be. And again, that means not only will there be buildings, there'll be programs, there'll also be hopefully opportunities for us to engage even more in that community through schools and educational programs and perhaps health clinics, early childhood kinds of things, as well as lifelong learning and executive education programs, some of which will be of interest, I hope, to the staff here. So those are the things that we're thinking about. And now I get to ask you questions, right? So we're going to have a couple of mics available. And before you ask me more questions, I get to turn the tables. But this is really in the spirit of just giving you an opportunity to engage the questions and that I've raise other ones really, so I can hear from you. So the first one I'm going to ask about, since I've been told repeatedly that there have been issues that we've been trying very hard to address, has to do with shared services. Is the situation, in fact, improving? What does it look like from where you sit? Would love to hear from you about this. Yeah.
Hello, I think it's on. There are certain services that have greatly improved. I would say that IT, it's perfect what's happened. Mm-hmm. The bringing together of all the resources, the training that each and every IT person gets, that's been a huge improvement, gotten rid of the silos that existed before. And even the support of software, which was like, just didn't happen before unless you were at Haas or something. But in other areas, it's difficult. I hear complaints from other people about HR. That's the area that's all along from RES on to the current situation. It's not a good fit somehow. It continues to be problematic. And there are delays where the department ends up paying fees for things being done late. So there's something needs to be done, and I don't know the exact details. And then I personally use Bearby in travel and entertainment, and I've seen improvements there.
Mm-hmm.
But there could be better communication when there's reorganizations, like the people that you're supposed to deal with have all changed, but they don't tell you unless you call and it's the wrong person you're talking to.
Oh, I see.
So those kind of communications. I'll give you another example. The silo thing about CSS, the fact that people are down on 4th Street. So we got assistance from shared services person to buy something from Amazon that we couldn't buy anywhere else. And so rather than using the address that she found in the Bearby ship to, she creatively and definitely with trying to be thorough and conscientious, looks up an address that is actually doesn't exist, puts in a mail code that is completely different from where the original destination was. And I called her when she sent me the thing about how it had been returned, and I explained to her about mail services, all the mail codes, clueless. And she really appreciated that I filled her in. I mean, I didn't scold her or anything, but the lack of integration there. I'll quote you a little bit, Janine. At a past event, you had mentioned that we would train the people came from outside the Berkeley way. So I see some problems with training the Berkeley way on how to do it. So I could see some improvement there. But I think the people who are at shared services who haven't been on campus, they don't feel a part of us. So how can that be addressed?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of compassion on campus for the grace of God, I could be out there on that island at 4th Street. You know, no, really, I'm serious. People feel compassion for those people. We feel sorry for them. So how to integrate those people? The people we used to work with, who we don't. They can't come to our parties even though we still supposedly work together. So it's a problem.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Bravo for bringing Peggy Houston into CSS.
Well, thanks. Yeah. My sense is that she's been doing heroic work, but my sense is also that it's still pushing a boulder up the proverbial Sisyphean mountain. Yeah.
Just to add to what she said, there have been problems with the staff service awards and people not being notified of their receptions or not receiving their staff service awards. And that's never happened. I've been here 20 years. That's never happened before.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Yes, one more, and then we'll move to the next one. Yeah.
Yes, and this has to do with not just CSS, but other programs on campus, because the individual people who work on them are doing a fantastic job, but it seems like sometimes things are released a little bit earlier than maybe they should be without all the troubleshooting that maybe they need. And that leads to a whole bunch of workarounds or kind of weird systems. So just, for example, for entertainment check requests in CSS, where you have to download a form, fill it out, sign it, upload it. You know, in today's electronic age, why can't all of that be done online? So that's just one example, but it seems like there are, there's deadlines, and I understand the push to meet them, but at the same time, if things aren't working, taking a step back and making sure they work before having everybody do these workarounds, which then require rearrangement later, might be helpful. Okay, well, thanks. That's always a fine balance, because troubleshooting is hard to do with you unless you're actually using it, but point taken, yeah. Yeah, smaller part, and to some extent, I think is being tried, but still, I hear you. Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to ask now to go to what I was talking about in relationship to both the CO2 drama
but more generally in terms of, the ways in which you are seeing that and the current debate over the future funding for the University of California. How are you seeing this playing out in the places that you live and work? What can you suggest to me as things I could perhaps do better at in terms of telling our own story, our Berkeley-specific story, but also the UC story? But how does all this, the things going on in Sacramento, the bills being mooted around, taking away our constitutional autonomy, and so on and so forth? I'd just love to hear from you about your views on this. Yeah, there's a hand back here.
I find it interesting that there's a sort of a disconnect from the way we perceive things on campus and our experience and my own experience of Cal and the good that we do for the state and the world. And then you read articles, in the Chronicle on any subject around the UC, and some of the comments are just like astonishing, and you really get a strong sense of like what the public feels.
Yeah.
And at my normal workday and with my family, it's like education is a good thing. This is something we should support. And there's like a fundamental thought process or a thought idea out there from just colleagues of ours who are citizens of California that we should not be subsidizing students at all. And it's just, it really just sort of breaks my brain trying to figure out like who are these people who would not support education at all, or they actually see it as that, even though we see that at work as there's a reduction in the support, and that's a bad thing. Other people think, well, we're already giving you 13%, why aren't you managing that better? So it's just really interesting to have those conversations with people, at other venues, and there's this other perception of the work we do, and I think sometimes the legislature leads in that sort of spirit of, maybe we shouldn't support this, or sort of gives, sort of supports the idea that maybe this isn't where our priorities should be, and that concerns me. I know it concerns the entire university, but also just the entire idea of education in a democracy. So.
Yeah. Thanks. There's a hand over here.
I think it's interesting, just to follow on, the debate nationally and also within California has seemed to focus on kind of a commoditization of education. And I think that we need to do a better job of explaining why elite universities are important in their own right. And I think it would be helpful either on our own as UC Berkeley or even with a coalition of the other top 6 universities, but to try to really push the debate to talk about why an elite education has its place in society, and it's not all about training accountants to go into accounting jobs or vocational endeavors, that there's a place for us that is important in society.
Yeah, no, thank you for saying that. I mean, I think, that the tendency has been in the debate to talk about just the general importance of education. And of course, that's where our access, commitment to affordability, and all the rest of it is, I think, very important, as to the connectivity of the system that was articulated, of course, most successfully when it was fully funded, but continues in different kinds of respects with the master plan and the transfers and the different kinds of relationships. But at some level, it is about elite higher education. It is about training future leaders. It is about doing cutting-edge research. And it's very hard to make that case in a politically compelling way today. And I'm constantly finding myself, brought short by, that disconnect between what it is we believe we're doing and its value and how it's perceived outside, which also goes to your point. Yeah.
So kind of following up on that, and then going to a different level is, and I mentioned this at a different situation where I was speaking with Dwayne Duckett, is that we as staff, or we as the university, we don't just churn through students, and we don't just employ individuals. We are a major employer in this state. Mm-hmm. And a lot of these employees can vote. You know, we aren't just taxpayers, we are also the beneficiaries. And it kind of befuddles me that we haven't done a little bit more to encourage those of us who are educated and believe in higher ed, whether we have advanced degrees or not, to say, get educated on on the bills and whatnot, and in fact, advocate. You know, I just, myself, I saw the email from Napolitano saying get involved at, what is it, UC4C or something like that. There's a little online community saying to contact your constituents, and they made it very easy for you to put in your name and your, you know, the whole online stuff. And I put it out there, and I posted it to BSA saying, we're not just people, we also vote. We have some power. We don't seem to utilize our own voices. I don't see a mechanism for us to build that constituency within ourselves. System-wide, we're powerful.
Yeah. No, we are, and I think that was exactly the intent that President Napolitano had when she sent that out. We have to be a little careful, obviously, because we're, you know, I mean, I'd even say if you have your own Gmail accounts, you use those when you're engaged in political advocacy, just to protect that potential blowback point. But we don't use the human capital, the human just political constituency that we in fact are. Yeah. So maybe one more on this, and then I'll ask another question.
Yes, this is following up on what they've been saying. I'm really glad that you are the chancellor right now because you're a humanities expert. And I think that is partly what's getting lost on people today. The focus is so much on technology. Yeah. And really, as you were saying, when you were discussing this new arts program and the new director and all, we really need to keep remembering that part of education is for us to always be thinking about what it means to be human beings, and I really think that is getting lost, and I think that you're in a great position to explain that to people, the value of that. That yes, of course, it's great when we get new apps and new digital toys and things like that, but you know, what is the purpose of all that really, other than to make some people really, really rich? And to constantly remind everyone that, you know, a big part of higher education is to really delve into the humanness of our experience that may not turn a dollar, but that is useful for all of us in some way or another. So, and you, I think, are really good at that. So please keep talking that way. Keep talking like a humanities person.
Thank you. And you can take the humanities person out of the humanities, but you can't. Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And the truth is that, you know, it's what I believe. It's what it's one of the core ingredients actually of the high quality education we have here, is that we don't think of it as just vocational training, even if it's a high vocation. But it's hard to convey this to a society, both at a time of economic hardship and also in a context in which one is worshiping wealth and technology in a way. You know, even if we react against it in our public lives, who are the heroes of this part of the world? And I'll do my best. But the more I can sing in a choir, the better. Believe me. Let me shift a little bit to another question I wanted to ask. We know that we're going to be encountering a lot of retirements, not just through the BSO, but over the next few years, according to our demographic projections. And you know, as we think about turnover, we're also thinking about the structures that will best open up opportunities. I've been talking a lot about this in my prior remarks, but I'd love to hear from you further suggestions of things we can do, both to provide opportunities for more training, but also for advancement within the university itself, rather than thinking of this as just a way station on a way to getting to a point where you can actually do what you are aspiring to do in your career. So any any comments and suggestions along those lines would be very helpful for me.
I have something.
Yeah, Donna.
I don't know if it was just an unusual personal circumstance, but as the chair of the Staff Assembly, my chair-elect left campus for a job in Oakland. He had actually been a top candidate in 3 different job searches here on this campus. And it was probably circumstantial. I mean, it just is. But how or what other ways can we, as hiring managers, is there any different way that we approach? If we know somebody is close to leaving campus, they have talent, what kind of flags could I have used, even though, again, a committee or a search is highly confidential of who's in the pool, how close to, being made an offer anyone is. But I just think we could get better at that. Or how do we identify when situations are like that? Or could there be a flag that an employee could use or a place to clearly state, I've interviewed, I'm a top candidate, I keep getting not the offer, I need to leave. So I feel like we're losing talent. It may be circumstantial that it works out to his life benefit long term. It was a very challenging moment for us on the council because there we are without a leadership position. He would have been the chair next year. We have recovered because that's what we do. But I just wondered how many other circumstances are like that. I don't know that we have any remedy, but I'm just throwing it out there that in highly sensitive situations, when we think we're about to lose talent, is there something that we could do to have that conversation somewhere?
That's a good point. I think we'll get back to trying to think that through, but that's helpful. I'm mindful, again, of the time, and I wanted to give you opportunities to not just respond to my immediate questions, but perhaps to anything I've said and any of the interests, any concerns you have and questions you wanted to raise that weren't in that list. So we have until 1:15, is that correct? Or?
I think so.
Yeah? So 10 minutes, and it's really over to you, please. Yeah.
So I was just going to respond to the question you asked about as staff, as we go sort of this natural attrition, reduction of staff numbers in certain areas. Perhaps we could start looking at securing some resources and services from off campus. So there are a lot of companies around this area that do part of what we do here on campus really well. And we could be supporting the local, economic environment, as well as sort of decreasing what the perception is of bloatedness on campus. There are some positions that absolutely have to be on campus. There's expertise, it's deep expertise, and then there's great career opportunities for those types of positions. But I think that there's a lot of services the campus, we employ people in that might not be necessary to be under our current structure.
Interesting. So. Yeah, I mean, there is, of course, more in the way of what gets colloquially referred to as outsourcing, but and that allows you to do something that is going to, be short, relatively fixed in terms of duration, so you're not bringing people in with false expectations about how long they'll be used, and probably there are real economies as well in terms of just overall expenditure, not to mention skill sets. Yeah. Right, but in terms, as we're looking, I mean, it's one of the things that really has to be engaged when we're talking about prioritization and reprioritization of the, what kinds of things can we do well, and what kinds of things can perhaps other groups do better, than we can do. Yeah. Yes, please.
I think one of the things that happens is that when people have been around for a while, particularly if they have not got something like a master's degree, they find they hit a kind of ceiling. It becomes hard for hiring managers to see those people differently as being able to step forward. And I thought if we consolidated this with some other things that I see is perhaps instead of calling McKinsey next time for some things like examining the user experience, What if we were to actually create opportunities and task forces of people here to serve on things like that, to go forth and interpret, collect this kind of information? We have the people here to do that kind of expertise. We have people, both, I guess, faculty and staff members who could actually make something like that work. This would not only provide usable experience from the folks who are actually there and living with it that could inform many changes and improvements that we could have. This would also provide work experience that would allow the people who participated in it to be visible differently as having potential, that we could be evaluating their potential and not just what they have done, so that they wouldn't keep getting overstepped by people from outside.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's, I mean, it's a really important point. I mean, the tendency often, and again, this goes to, a number of questions, but yours also, that one is always tempted to look outside as opposed to train one's own. And in some areas, I think that we, can just do that. But again, it's a kind of new, it's a new world in some respects, given the fact that some of the new things we need people to do are not necessarily things we've traditionally had programs in. So again, that will require some work. I'm hopeful as well that as we set up the BGC, there will be new opportunities for postgraduate training that will exist there, including things that would be partly online and partly in the classroom, kind of hybrid models that will work for people who have regular positions and jobs, but nevertheless, we'll use the East Bay catchment area and Berkeley's proximity to Richmond. It's just 10, 15 minutes away to open up some opportunities as well.
You mentioned earlier that we are about 43% down in terms of budget when we compare with 2010 due to the redistribution of wealth from UCOP. So my question is, when we start recouping the money due to OE initiatives in a couple of years, will we as a flagship campus of the UC system will be still at the short end of the stick because we are good at what we do, in fact, being penalized for getting the money back. So we are not digging ourselves out of the hole, so to speak.
Yeah. No, it's a terrific question. And it's one where I'm quite sure that with OE, we'll be able to keep the resources that we garner from it. But, when we talk with OP about these issues, I mean, sometimes, these are formula that are well-intentioned, but just have these sometimes unanticipated effects. And sometimes it's a consequence of not having extended the funding stream model all the way across the board. There were changes in the way in which money was allocated from the state over the last few years that have actually given us greater levels of local control, meaning that we could maintain and continue to capture revenues that came even from activities on campus. And our expectation is that what we have will continue, and that would include OE. But we're actually working with OP now in a very interesting, I think, and new way to discuss some of the kinds of special concerns we have as a flagship, to make sure that they appreciate the uniqueness of our needs and also of our situation in regards to what I was talking about, the kind of gap between revenue and expense. We were the first to try operational excellence, and now it's being modeled and copied elsewhere. We were the first to really establish a new budgeting system that allowed us to understand much better where our money is and where it's going. But there always is a tendency to think about cross-campus subsidization. And as important as it is to support all the different campuses of the University of California, my job is to make sure that Berkeley continues to not just survive but thrive, and so these are things that we're spending a lot of time thinking about. Maybe one more question? And, yeah.
I have a quick comment and then a question. So back in December, you did a kind of a holiday greetings video that was distributed on campus, and I found that very valuable. I thought that was a really simple, nice way to reach everyone on campus. And I enjoyed it. I asked other colleagues, did you see the video? So I think that's a really valuable, meaningful way to engage with staff and the campus at large internally, to kind of build morale, tell us about the issues that are on the table, and communicate with us kind of thoughtfully and authentically. So I would really encourage those in the future. And then just a quick question. Could you describe a little bit your participation and how you're involved in the Chancellor's Staff Advisory Committee, CSAC? I haven't heard you talk about it in your own words, so.
Yeah. No, well, I mean, CSAC is, there are many chancellor committees across campus, and some of them I can meet with on a more regular basis, and others I need to keep trying to stay in touch with the work they're doing. But this has been the committee that has been connecting with enough different units across campus that it's been extraordinarily valuable in pooling things that we need to keep in mind as we're thinking about everything from compensation issues to all the things really we've talked about today. So I work with Janine very closely to keep in touch with the work that CSAC is doing, and I think I need to set up another breakfast so that I can again have the opportunity to talk to that group in person. But a lot of this, when a lot of my schedule is just it's ridiculous. Yeah. No, I mean it's not. Your schedules are ridiculous. Every one of our schedules. I mean, we're all overbooked and overloaded. But there's actually an army of people who are trying to give me access to as many different units on campus and off campus as possible at any given point. And what I've been trying to do is to figure out what to differentiate the symbolic and the real, and to concentrate on the real. And that sometimes means I don't see people as much as I want to, but it doesn't mean I'm not getting the information that comes out of those units. And I'm just trying to maximize what I can do effectively and still maintain. I'm not only a humanist, I'm a human being. So, I also, so by the way, but that doesn't mean that when I'm walking on campus with my dogs, you shouldn't come up and talk to me and tell me what, and use the opportunity, because I live here. I work here and I do walk my dogs here. But CSAC has been really, really helpful. And what's been so terrific is that they come with a opening statement. Their mission is to help us. Work with them effectively, and hats off to that group, because they really have been so productive for us. So I'm 1 minute over, and I want to thank you for spending the time here, in spite of the fact that it's much nicer outside. But I look forward to the next chat with you, and also from finding other ways to stay in touch. And I thank you for your commendation about the holiday greeting, but I think there are other things we can do as well to keep this communication going virtually as well as really. So thank you all.